Olivia Clarke, editor of Chicago Lawyer Magazine and the Chicago Daily Law Bulletin, and we're here today with the Inside Out columnists Tina Martini and David Susler. And today we're going to kind of talk about some of the best of videos. We're going to take on a few topics that we've covered in the last few years, so we hope you enjoy it. Are you guys ready? We're going to go blast from the past.
As ready as we'll ever be.
So the way we looked at these videos was to kind of find out which ones have gotten the most hits over the last few years. And so one was the topic of fitting the firm with the client.
Okay.
And so I thought maybe we'd start out talking about maybe your number one ingredient for a good relationship between a client and a lawyer. And you guys come at it from two different angles, so I think it might be interesting to talk about what makes that great relationship.
For me as outside counsel, I think the most important thing is to really listen to the client. We've talked about how it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. So when I meet people, whether it's in a personal context or professional context, if they ever start that conversation or want to engage in that conversation about getting help from an attorney and they know that I'm a lawyer and they want to talk about it, I always try to hear where they're coming from, get a sense of what their real needs are, and really try to take a very realistic look at whether I'm in a position to help them, or if for whatever reason it doesn't seem like it's going to work for quite this particular matter, try to figure out what will, because I think having that honesty and that openness is very important, and then they will think of you for the next thing if for some reason it doesn't work out this time. And you want to maintain your credibility, and you can't really maintain your credibility unless there's an authenticity there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how to say this succinctly because there's so many things, yet it kind of boils down to I have to be able to click with them in some way. I agree with everything Tina said. I need to be able to have an open, honest dialogue and feel that my client cares about my matter. I know my outside lawyers are busy people, but somehow they need to make me think that I'm their most important client. To me, subject matter expertise goes without saying, or they're either not going to get hired or they're going to get replaced very quickly. So, there's things like creativity, proactivity, those are important elements, but it really is the more intangible elements of client service and feeling that we have a good relationship. We don't have to be friends, but a comfort in communicating and knowing that they have my back.
Okay. So the next video that got a lot of hits was about law schools. And so the question I have for you both is, say you don't go to a tier 1 law school and you go to, a local law school or a lower tier school. How do you, what advice do you have for helping those lawyers who graduate get that first job, particularly here in Chicago?
I think it's critically important that first and foremost, and this is kind of taking a step back from that point, but make sure this is really what you want to do. Because if it's something that you feel you're pushed into or your heart's not in it, I would definitely recommend backburnering it and really thinking about it to make sure that it's what you want to do. Because if it is what you really want to do, that translates into passion. And if the passion is there, you're going to go the extra mile. It's going to come through in the interviews. It's going to come through in your work. You're going to do better in school. It's just going to translate to more traction with getting that first job. So I would say that it's really important to try to do very well, get really good grades, as good a grades as you can, round out your experience by doing extracurriculars either through your school or through, getting some type of work experience that may be for free that will help you end up getting that first job out of school. But just be passionate about what you're undertaking, because those are the folks, and I've interviewed hundreds of people on campus, those are the folks that I remember the most, and those are the folks that I want to work with.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And in this economy, it's tough. I just recently read the Chicago Lawyers, I think it was the November article that had a piece about young lawyers opening their own shop. I mean, in today's economy, that's a real reality that they may have to think about doing that, but they have to be ready to do it, because it's not an easy task. It's scary, it's hard work, but you can make it work. But it really comes down to, it's easy to say, chase your passion, and you have to. You may have to wait tables while you volunteer at a pro bono clinic, for example, to get some experience. But that may be what these young lawyers need to do in order to get that first job. And the first job is not likely to be their last job. It doesn't have to be in what they ultimately want to do, which is ultimately going to change as they go down the road anyway.
Okay, and in the last video we're going to kind of revisit is a topic that you both talk a great deal about, is diversity. And so I guess the big question that comes up often when talking to lawyers is, why isn't it as diverse at the top as it is when in terms of a law firm, a legal department, or even any kind of corporation? You find that as you rise up the to the senior ranks, it's less diverse. Why is that?
Well, I think it's a reflection of the fact that when you look at people within an organization, both at the bottom, entry level, as well as towards the top, you have many fewer people who are diverse throughout all ranks. I think it's a similar issue with women. There are just fewer women. There are about 50% women entry level when you look at law schools as well as law firms, but there are fewer women as you get higher through the ranks. And I just think it's hard. I think when you look at, for example, private practice, it's just a tough way to make a living. And I think it's tougher when you have a situation where you feel alone. And I think that it's true for any profession. I think it's true anywhere that if you look around and you don't see many people like you, it makes you start to think some things about, should I be here? Is there something wrong with me? There's a lot of self-doubt. I think that's just human nature. And I think that contributes to what we see as a phenomenon, I think, across a lot of professions.
Yeah, and you can also take that and realize, we're talking about lawyers here. You're talking about smart, for the most part, very smart, very driven people. So at some point, they may just decide to go and do something else where they think they can have a bigger impact, make more of a difference, or something, a new interest comes along they want to pursue. Another issue is where the focus for many years has been on creating diversity. The conversation really has only recently begun to shift to inclusion, and I think that's still a place where firms are struggling with is inclusion, which is the part of the equation that helps keep people, including such things, giving people a meaningful seat at the table, having all the attorneys have a stake in the future of the firm, a stake in the business, so that they have a meaningful role to play. It includes mentoring, it includes access to client development and professional training, and helping your diverse attorneys increase their networks. Those are areas where I think law firms are beginning to address, but can do a better job.
Yeah, and just the need to have everybody at the table and everybody be part of the conversation. I think David's absolutely right in bringing that point up, that there's been a realization in the past few years that the inclusion component is critical, because it's that component where you get the majority, so to speak, and those are the folks that in many ways are in the best position, and many of them are very interested and just as invested in making sure that the workplace is diverse, because it's the right thing to do. And even if for whatever reason you don't really relate to the moral case, then there's the business case, and companies and clients continue to require and request that people have diverse workforces, because that optimizes performance of teams.
Great. Well, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. So next time we'll be talking about dealing with stress and being a healthy lawyer. Thank you very much.